Greetings students, here is a quick tutorial on how to use the online annotation tool called Scribble. So you've already been asked to download the Scribble application onto your computer, and you'll notice that there is now a Scribble button on your kind of the banner for your internet. So make sure you click that. Once you drag that Scribble button down onto the website that you want to annotate, you'll see this toolbar down here. You can see my cursor kind of running over the toolbar that should be on your screen once you've downloaded the Scribble application. So what I've done, and you can see some preliminary annotations that I've done for my summer reading book, Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. And just to remind you, it was your responsibility to find a news article that somehow, some way relates to your summer reading book, whether it be through the author biography or an article about the time period in which the book was written, or perhaps some of the allusions that come up in your book. You could research some of the allusions. So what I decided to do was to look into the New York Times story book review of Into Thin Air by Krakauer. So what I've done is I've highlighted this question already. You can see the red text that was originally black. And the reason why I highlighted that in red is because I made a little note here, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. I made a little note here reminding me that this question that's posed by the journalist is essentially a good question to keep in mind as I read the book. What does this question imply about extreme sports, about survival, about the business of ascending Mount Everest? And I made a note for myself here using Scribble to remind me to consider this question as I read. So what's cool about Scribble, folks, is that once you place this comment, I've placed this comment, you can see it highlights the text that I've attached the note to in purple. So I can see when I make the annotation that I can see where it matches. I can see where that note belongs in terms of the actual article. So you can move the notes so they're not in your way as you're reading. But let's continue with some of the tools at the bottom here. So you have the opening quote here: "With enough determination, any bloody idiot can get up this hill," observed Rob Hall, the leader of a commercial expedition on his 8th tour of Mount Everest. "The trick is to get back down alive." So my thoughts as a good reader is that I want to pay attention to some of the diction, some of the word choices in this article, and the best way to do that is to go down, I think, to your highlighted text tool. You can see here. I like yellow, right? So we'll keep it on yellow. It's nice and bright. And I'm just going to highlight the word commercial by clicking and dragging after I've selected the highlighting tool, and you release. So that points out the diction to me as I continue with my annotation. So the particular descent ahead of those on the hill on May 16th, 1996. So another thought is that I'd like to record, the time period, the setting. We're going back to the mid-90s here. "It resulted in the greatest loss of life in the history of mountaineering on Everest, as news spread of the 9 deaths." Okay, so there are 9 deaths here, including that of Hall. So this Rob Hall character, I already know is probably an important character in the novel, "who spoke to his wife in New Zealand by radio phone." I like that word, so I'm going to highlight it as well. It's important, folks, that when you're highlighting that you don't highlight too much because it defeats the purpose of making the highlights. Now, what I really like about this particular software, what I like about Scribble, is that once you've placed a note or some highlights onto the web page that you're reading, it stays in place. So it essentially becomes part of the web page, which I think is very neat. So I just want to take a moment to go through all the different buttons here at the bottom, and then I'll allow you to take some time to annotate the article of your choice. So you have here the Beta Scribble link, which will take you back to the Scribble homepage. The next button here is a sign-in button. So once you become a member of Scribble, you can save some of the web pages that you annotate. So this button allows you to sign in and then connect with the library, which then that you might have saved in terms of collecting all of your annotated web pages. This next button here is in fact a button that will take you to your library if you do have a number of saved annotated websites. You've already seen me use the highlighting tool, and I'll just remind you by clicking here that you can change the color depending on personal preference. I do recommend using bright colors like yellow or red that really help to kind of visually emphasize whatever content it is that you're highlighting. This is the note tool. So again, you can change the colors of your notes. We'll stick with purple. And let's see, let's add a note using maybe the next third paragraph here. So Jon Krakauer was one of the survivors, and Into Thin Air, he relives the storm and its aftermath, trying to answer those questions posed above. So what went wrong? Why was the approaching storm ignored? And most emphatically, why are tourists with more money than expertise being taken up Everest in the first place? So my initial question here is, what does Jon Krakauer consider himself? Is he a tourist? Is he a survivalist? I know he's a journalist who has profound interest in survival stories. So I'm going to make a little note here. Notice it's highlighting the whole paragraph for me, but I'm just going to have that first section be highlighted. So as a good reader, I always want to make sure that I'm asking myself questions and thinking about what I'm reading as I read it. So I wonder how Krakauer labels himself as a tourist, survivalist, question mark. What was his intention for climbing Everest? So these are just some thoughtful annotations that I'm making as I'm reading the article. And these annotations, these kinds of thoughts, allow good readers to remember what they read and also think about what they're reading as they read it. So this helps me to establish a relationship with the author a little bit, his motivations, and I'm thinking about, what brought Krakauer on this adventure in the first place, and how does he fit into a lot of the questions that we're wondering in terms of kind of how the tragedy transpired on the mountain. So to go back to our toolbar, I've just showed you the note tool. The next button is to change text color, which is what I did up here in the red. So in order to do that, you just highlight, we'll highlight, let's change all the text color for the questions here because those are some important questions to consider. We've used yellow, we've used purple, we've used red. Let's change this to blue. Okay. So you can change your text, you can underline it, bold it, strike through. So maybe I want to underline Jon Krakauer's name, so I just remember that that's my author. The only problem with underline is that when we're using digital resources, it kind of implies a hyperlink, so that can be a little bit confusing. Moving right along here in terms of our toolbar, you have undo your annotation. I don't know if you saw that undid both my underline and my changed text color, but you can also redo them, right? Show, hide all of your annotations. Okay, that's the next button here. This button here will allow me to minimize and maximize my notes. So you can see once I click that button, my notes become these little icons as opposed to the full notes themselves. This button here allows me to show and hide my annotation legend. So if I want to kind of clarify, that my red text is an essential reading question. So anything that's highlighted red will be my essential reading question. Anything that's highlighted yellow, I might put tone, mood. I highlight the diction, highlight important word choices. So I can print this legend when I go and finish my activity here, and the teacher or whomever's reading it can know that all my yellow highlights are my tone, mood, important word choice highlights. All of the red refers to essential reading questions, so on and so forth. So that's your annotation legends. Okay, here you have bookmark this page. So if I'd like to bookmark it in my library or on my internet browser, I could do that. I can share this on Twitter. I can share this on Facebook. I can create a permalink to this page to share with others. I can share a copy of this annotated page by email, which is a great way to share the work with a teacher. I can also save and then eventually print. Right? So you can print the annotation, which is essentially what one would do if you're working inside the classroom on this assignment. This final button here allows you to report a bug or to provide feedback to the website. And then finally here you can hide your toolbar. Right? Enjoy the resource, folks. It's a fun way to interact with an online article.